100 people died and almost 300 people were wounded in the explosion, and the number may increase. Other dead and injured will come out later. It is the second Zobe attack, and it is the same people and the same place.
The European Union called on Russia to reverse its decision to pull out of a UN-brokered grain deal on Sunday, a move that undermined efforts to ease a global food crisis and that Ukraine said Moscow had planned well in advance. Moscow suspended its participation in the Black Sea deal on Saturday, effectively cutting shipments from Ukraine, one of the world's top grain exporters. It was in response to what Russia called a major Ukrainian drone attack earlier in the day on its fleet near the port of Sevastopol in Russian-annexed Crimea. EU Foreign Policy Chief Josep Borrell urged Russia to reverse its decision on Twitter, adding that, quote, Russia's decision to suspend participation in the Black Sea deal puts at risk the main export route of much-needed grain and fertilizers. On Saturday, US President Joe Biden called the move purely outrageous.
It's going to increase starvation. There's no reason for them to do that, but they're always looking for some rationale to be able to say the reason they're doing something outrageous is because the West made them do it.
Russia's defense ministry said Ukraine attacked the fleet with 16 drones early on Saturday, and that British Navy specialists had helped coordinate what it called a terrorist attack. Russia said it repelled the attack, but that the ships targeted were involved in ensuring the grain corridor out of Ukraine's Black Sea ports. Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said Moscow used the explosions 137 miles away from the grain corridor as a false pretext for a long-intended move. And President Volodymyr Zelensky called for a strong response from the United Nations and G20.
How can Russia be among others in the G20 if it deliberately works to create famine on several continents? This is nonsense. Russia has no place in the G20.
Russia's departure from the grain deal marks a new development in an 8-month war that began with Russia's invasion in February. The conflict has recently been dominated by a Ukrainian counteroffensive and Russian drone and missile attacks that have destroyed more than 30% of Ukraine's generating capacity and hit populated areas. Each side has accused the other of being prepared to detonate radioactive bombs.
The man who clubbed U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband in the head with a hammer after forcing his way into the couple's San Francisco home faces charges of attempted murder and other felonies. Police have not yet offered a motive for Friday's assault on 82-year-old Paul Pelosi, who, according to his wife's office, underwent surgery for a skull fracture and injuries to his hands and right arm, though doctors expect a full recovery.
I want to make a brief statement about Nancy and Paul Pelosi.
U.S. President Joe Biden spoke to reporters in Delaware on Saturday about the attack.
Talk to them. He seems to be doing a lot better. Looks like he's going to recover fully. But also, don't know for certain, but it looks like this was intended for Nancy. He kept asking, where's Nancy? Where's Nancy?
The House Speaker herself, a Democrat who is second in the constitutional line of succession to the U.S. presidency, was in Washington at the time of the assault. She flew to San Francisco hours after the attack to be with her husband and released a statement on Saturday expressing dismay, saying, quote, "Our children, our grandchildren, and I are heartbroken and traumatized by the life-threatening attack on our pop." The incident stoked fears about political violence less than 2 weeks ahead of midterm elections on November 8th that will decide control of the House of Representatives and Senate, coming amid the most vitriolic and polarized U.S. political climate in decades. Police identified the man arrested at the scene as David DePape. He was taken to a San Francisco hospital, but it was not made clear whether he was there for medical or psychiatric care or both. San Francisco Police Chief William Scott told a Friday news briefing that police detectives, assisted by FBI agents, had yet to determine what precipitated the home invasion, but added,
"This was intentional, and it's wrong."
On the streets of South Korea's Seoul on Sunday, residents lay flowers and search for missing loved ones after a Halloween stampede killed at least 153 people in a packed nightlife area. A huge crowd celebrating in the popular Itaewon district surged into an alley on Saturday night, emergency officials said, adding the death toll could rise. South Korea's President Yoon Suk-yeol visited the site of a stampede after declaring a period of national mourning on Sunday. He expressed condolences to the victims, most of whom were in their 20s. It was the first Halloween event in Seoul in 3 years to be virtually free of COVID-19 restrictions and social distancing. Many of the partygoers were wearing masks and Halloween costumes. Nathan Tavaniti witnessed the stampede.
There's so many people. What are you gonna do with 10 people? Yeah. And I had to turn around and I told the crowd, "You can't come this way. People are dying." Because I already knew how bad it was. And people were being so rude. And I had to tell them, "You can't come this way." And then it took so long for emergency services to arrive.
Community centres have become makeshift facilities for missing persons as families and friends desperately sought word of loved ones. The Interior Ministry said at least 90% of the victims had been identified, with delays affecting some foreign nationals and teenagers who did not yet have identification cards. The disaster is the country's deadliest since the 2014 ferry sinking that killed 304 people, mainly high school students.